Year, everybody. Welcome to Happy Hour with Maestro Tim. I am said Maestro Tim. Welcome in 2021 and good riddance to 2020. But thank you for joining me this year on our very first broadcast in the new year. My guest happens to be a great conductor, great musician, a great all-around guy. Please join me in welcoming the music director of the Des Moines Symphony, Maestro Joseph Giunta. Welcome and Happy New Year to you, sir.
Thank you, Maestro. How are you, Tim?
Doing absolutely great and about to be better. So when we were corresponding back and forth, I asked you what cocktail you wanted to drink. So what are we drinking today?
I'm drinking what's called a paper airplane.
Okay.
And the ingredients are equal parts of Aperol, Amaro, a good bourbon, and lemon juice. So equal parts of that.
What is Amaro? It took me a while to find it in our local liquor store. But what sort of
Amaro is a sweet Italian liqueur, and an Aperol is almost like Campari. It's also Italian. It's red. It has sort of I don't want to say an antiseptic taste, but it's close to that, and it takes over. Tools down the sweetness a little bit in the combination in the chemistry.
So having a last name like Giunta and we're drinking an Italian cocktail, that's just a coincidence, right?
Well, I still have a lot of family, as you know, in Italy. I have 3 cousins that are still living there, and it's interesting how their culture is so different than ours. But it all starts with great wine and great spirits and great food in Italy, you know.
Perfect. Well, I got to unplug so I can grab my shaker. So let's get to work, shall we? Here you go, baby.
All right. So I'll join the duet. You ready?
Please, yes.
So, there you go.
Just, our entire percussion sections are like slapping their foreheads right now.
Exactly.
All right.
So if my son was here, he's in LA now and working in the movie business. He's a sound guy in the movie business. He would say to me, Dad, you don't shake a shaker up and down, that you shake it around.
Oh, okay.
Because again, that helps blend everything. So this is that I've learned over the years, and it tastes different, Tim, believe it or not.
You know, technique is everything.
Well, exactly. Isn't that a beautiful color, by the way?
It's lovely. So was this a recent discovery of yours, or you've been drinking this for years and you've been holding out on me?
A couple years now. Cheers.
Well, cheers to you, sir.
Cheers.
All right. But I also have a surprise for you. My New Year's, I don't know about yours, but my New Year's was kind of quiet. So that because this is the first broadcast of the new year, I want to have a New Year countdown with you, and I've got my noisemaker in your honor. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year! Yeah. That's no fair.
I know. That's right. But and I've got confetti in my cocktail now. So oh well. So here we go.
It looks like somebody just sprayed coconut all over you. Shredded coconut.
I wish. It's plastic. Oh God. All right. So, like always, the show off the air was even better. You and I already started talking about our trials and tribulations. Take us back to what we were talking about, how disorienting it was in March when all of a sudden the hammer came down and we had to stop cold turkey and what we were doing.
Well, you know this as well as anyone, Tim. When you have something that you're doing that you love so much. And let's face it, it's an important part of our lives, probably second to our families, I would imagine, for most of us. And when that suddenly comes down, and let me just bring you back to what was happening in our lives here on that Friday. I think it was Friday, March 15th. I was in the middle of rehearsals for Carmina Burana. We had 350 people in the chorus and almost 100 musicians on stage at the Civic Center. We had 2 rehearsals, and at noon on the 3rd rehearsal, Friday, I happened to be in the office I had a brief meeting, and our executive director and a couple of our staff members were standing in our hall. And Richard Early, who you knew, our executive director, came up to me and he said, "Joe, the governor's speaking at noon."
Yeah.
The TV was on. And the next thing I know, she's closing down things. And within an hour, we had canceled our rehearsal.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was how much warning I got. I mean, we had heard a few days earlier that things were not so good on the East Coast and whatnot, but we fully anticipated getting through that weekend and this thing lasting a couple weeks, a month, or whatever. And it was really a shock to all of us. And that was sort of how quickly this all came upon us. Now, obviously, fast forward, Tim, and you went through a phase of, well, it's kind of fun to just not do anything, and you get through that, and eventually you start to believe the experts when they tell you that it's going to last a long time, and then you start thinking, well, what we can bury our heads in the sand and hope that it all goes away, it's all a bad dream, or we can try to embrace some technology and see what options we have, what we can afford, and here we are. Right. I mean, this is what we did. Yeah.
I was just talking and commiserating with you how it's awfully strange when this first happened, and we were planning, well, maybe it's only going to last a month, maybe 2 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year. I don't think if there was one thing I could communicate with audiences is that concerts don't happen overnight. I mean, there is a good process of at least 2 months to get things onto stage. And so planning for everything when you have no fixed timetable that you can rely on, oh my God, it is a lot of wasted work in many ways. I don't know about you. I'm assuming you were making contingency plans left, right, and center that never saw the light of day, but I was always thinking that in many ways, that has been the most exhausting part about this year. How about for you?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the fact that we're planners, you have to be planners. As a music director, you're usually looking at things a couple, 3 years in advance. You're constantly trying to come up with and predict the newest trend, the newest piece, the newest this, the newest that, how to keep people involved and be innovative, respect the tradition, all those things that go into planning. And that, for me, is the most difficult, because you plan, and then things don't happen, or things get changed, or things get canceled, or things get postponed. And that, to me, has been the most frustrating, Right. Now, on the good side, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. What would we do without this technology that we have, Tim? This has helped people become a little bit more social. And it has helped us communicate to our audiences as best we can. You just asked off camera about New Year's Eve. We did a virtual New Year's Eve fundraiser. We have a big New Year's Eve show every year. Yeah. Sells out the Civic Center and so on. Well, that didn't happen. So we decided we could either go dark, or I could pull in some chips from some of my friends that have worked for us, people that Leslie Odom Jr., Audra McDonald, people like that, some of the Pops people that we worked with. And oh my goodness, were they thrilled to participate. And I said, look, if you want to just say Happy New Year, great. If you want to sing something, great. Do whatever you want to do. It was very heartfelt, very warm. We had a nice audience that listened to it. We raised some money. But again, what I felt more than anything, and Carrie, my wife, was with me when we had sort of a pre-concert event with people in different chat rooms and whatnot that we visited with. Tim, they were so pleased to be connected to somebody and have something to do New Year's Eve. I mean, that to me, my prediction is that when we do get back to whatever normal is going to be, maybe next fall, that people may not come right away. It might be more like a dimmer switch turning on a light, Mm-hmm. But I think, much like after the pandemic of 1918, that the Roaring Twenties people started coming out and really going crazy and looking for art and literature and everything else that was happening. I think we're going to have the Roaring Twenties here in our world, and I think that people miss what we do so much, and I think there's going to be a so much more of an appreciation for it than ever before.
I completely agree. It's I just sort of wonder, why is it that society needs to learn the same lessons over and over again? I mean, professionally, every day we have conversations with constituencies about the importance of what we do, the importance of live music, and it's not just a gig or a concert. We're in community building and making our where we live a better place to live, and people will understand that now that we've been dark for a year. They always understand that, and they will come back roaring. But how quickly we soon forget in many times. We found that out during the flood here. We had a great resurgence of enthusiasm when the Paramount reopened, and of course that ultimately sort of subsided. It's just it's too bad that we have to learn these hard lessons over and over and over, that we take things for granted until they're gone.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you know, Cedar Rapids in particular has been hit very hard and more than once.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
it's kind of biblical. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and then you were telling me the last time we talked, you were telling me about some of your library was flooded, and
yeah, like I say, all we're waiting for now is pestilence. We had another rainstorm, the derecho, and it kind of took out our library. Which, by the way, I'm looking at your office right now, and I'm incredibly jealous. I mean, I see your CD collection, and good for you. You still have a collection of these things called vinyl LPs.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. Here's the newest one. Can you see that?
Yep, can. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
We reproduced this show last year when we celebrated the Bernstein year.
Right. Yeah.
And it was Manfred, Don Quixote, and Maestro singers, and nice. we played the exact show, and we played on this vinyl. There's the radio broadcast. And the announcer that announces the sponsors and talks about, you know, Bernstein's backstage, nervously waiting, and we played that over the loudspeaker, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
You know, actually demystify programming. I you know, sometimes people think music directors and/or their committees, you know, lock themselves into this room and commune with the muses. Maybe during yoga or something like that. What's your process here when you decide to come up with programs just like that? I mean,
well, you know, we all have our idiosyncratic ways of doing things, and all with a common goal of hoping to give an audience a wide variety of music and styles and greatness. We hope, and you know, it's certainly not in our job descriptions to have every audience member like or enjoy everything that we do as an orchestra, but we hope they at least appreciate it, and, you know, will tolerate some of it in order to hear things that they can relate to. But I usually use, Tim, I try to use three criteria when putting together programs, and these are very general, but the first one usually starts with the musicians. What music will inspire them? What music haven't we played for a while? What music will help you know, play to the strengths, help with the weaknesses, whatever that is, because as you know, you've been in Orchestra Iowa for over a decade now, right?
Yeah.
And I've been here for 3 decades. So you know, you're responsible for moving the needle forward all the time. And that's an important process. So that's the first thing. I usually start how can we find music that will help improve the orchestra year after year? Second, I then turn to the audience and think, what's the audience need to? Regardless of how many different wordings and mission statements that you and I have read over the years, the basic premise of why we have an orchestra in the city is to expose the great repertoire that's written for it. That's basically what we do. So I want to be sure that our audience, it's important to hear a Tchaikovsky symphony and Beethoven symphonies and Mozart and so on. Also new music and French music and Italian music and so on. So that's part of it. And then the third thing, and I don't mean this to be selfish, but the third part of the process is I just have to conduct music that I love. Yeah. And you're smiling because you knew I was going to say that.
Yeah. You're just brave enough to actually admit it, and I thank you for that.
It's very hard. It's very hard for me to study music that either I don't like or I don't relate to. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about why I feel this way. I had the great privilege of studying with two fabulous associate conductors of major orchestras when I was in my later teens and early 20s. Henry Mazer, who was the Chicago Symphony Associate Conductor, American conductor, and William Smith, the longtime associate conductor of Ormady in the Philadelphia Orchestra. Both of those guys had to prepare hundreds of pieces that they never conducted. And when they would get a chance to conduct a Messiah or a Nutcracker or whatever else it would be, they would, of course, it was exciting for them, but they were forced in a situation where they had to balance a season. Sure. So you have all the famous conductors come in and do whatever pieces they loved and whatnot. And then at the end, you got a 36-week season, got 2 weeks empty. And so you say to William Smith, now you have to balance the season. And so you learn a lot of repertoire that maybe other conductors wouldn't learn, because you're learning pieces like, right here, the Nielsen, what is it? The Nielsen second.
Oh, hey, the slow movement is great. Yeah.
I mean, these are pieces that are sort of off people's radar, but you love the Janacek Terrace Bulba, those kinds of pieces. So you sprinkle in what needs to be heard, needs to be played, and then pieces that I really relate to. And Schulte once told me, George Schulte, the great Hungarian conductor, once told me, don't try to learn all 15 Shostakovich symphonies. He said, learn 3 or 4 of them and do them well. Do them better than anybody else, but don't try to. And he was right. And so that's kind of my programming. Now, Tim, now that we're in this virtual situation, programming music for a 95-piece orchestra in a 2,600-seat auditorium is a lot different than what I'm doing now, which are these virtual programs for anywhere from five-member little chamber groups to 30-member orchestras. And that has just, you talk about light at the end of the tunnel, that has opened up a tremendous amount of repertoire that I would never consider the Civic Center.
Yeah, isn't that great? I mean, sometimes the economics of what we do kind of precludes us being able to find these small little gems and really because if you're going to have to hire 90 musicians or 70 musicians, damn it, I'm going to employ them all. I'm going to make sure they're always playing. But now there's some great pieces for 20, 30, 40, That's 15 that you can really get into.
You're fortunate to have a chamber orchestra and a chamber series there. We've never had that privilege. We do what's called a Spotlight at the Temple series, which the musicians curate. They do chamber music and whatnot a couple, 3 times a year. But this is a first for us doing some of these small orchestra pieces. So that coupled with, the horrible things that we all witnessed this summer in our country after the George Floyd death. And you can't, as artists, musicians, you can't be immune to this sort of thing. And I really felt a need to not only program what you would normally program, a Mozart symphony or an early Haydn symphony or some Bach, but I really wanted to do some underrepresented music, underrepresented composers, and some minority composers. And so Tim, we're doing some William Grant Still, we're doing some Gabriella Lena Frank, we're doing some Jesse Montgomery, Scott Joplin, some of these truly great composers, living and gone, whose music has just been either ignored or not played for whatever reason. it's just been a tremendous journey for us, and I'm grateful. And oh my goodness, are we getting wonderful comments about this? People have noticed
Yeah.
that the repertoire is different. I want to just show you something here because I put it out here to remind myself. I know he's a buddy of yours, and he's a buddy of mine, and he's from Cedar Rapids. Michael Doherty's Sinatra Shag.
You know, I think I've heard of the guy. Yeah. Remind me, what's he like? Small guy, right?
Exactly. So we're doing this piece, which is for what, 5-6 instruments. Then we're doing the dandy dances. This is for winds, okay? And then the Mio Concerto for Percussion with Aaron Williams, who you know.
Great piece, yeah.
And then the 3 dances from L'Histoire du Soldat, and then Liber Tango of Piazzolla, and then a pianist is playing Solace and the blues from Lenox Avenue of William Grant Still, and Solace from the Joplin, and then we close with The Entertainer.
That's great.
Now, I would never consider this music in a 2,600 seat hall, but here we are.
Right. Yeah.
And it's exciting for us, and I think people are really, really appreciative of it.
I'm going to check our chat room to see if anybody's watching. Let's see what they have to say. But I want you to, I'm going to ask you this question after I get out of the chat room.
Sure.
Because we talked about conducting pieces that you like. So I want to ask you. So I'm going to ask you, what are the standard repertoire pieces that you have tried to avoid your life? The kind that you would rather give to a guest conductor. And because we all have those sort of surprising pieces that it's okay not to like a piece. You'd be surprised at how many standard rep pieces I'm not a fan of. So I'm going to ask you that question after I see some of the comments in our chat room. Danny Redmond says. Has he discovered any South American or African pieces for orchestra? You've already addressed that. Randy Reynolds says, gave away my Thorns table that could play them. Forgive me if I have the wrong pronunciation. Ellen McGoffey. I'm a little. She's saying I've some. Oh, she was talking about your collection of LPs. She has some 17 RPMs. Let's see. That's all I have right now. Let's see what's going on. Oh, there's some up here. Kathy Varney, of course. She's always a fan of the show. She's been drinking with us for at least 30 episodes. Hi, Kathy. Joyce Finch, who's our board chair, she's saying Happy New Year to you. And Danny Redmond is drinking Irish whiskey, and he's saying Sláinte to you. So you gotta love that. John Noyd, first time he's watched Happy Hour. Welcome. The water is warm here, John. I'm glad you're here. Let's see. That's pretty much that's going on there. So keep the comments coming, and if you actually have something that you would like Joe to questions that you have for him to answer, please bring them in and I'll pass them on to him. So you've had some time to prepare your answers. What are the standard repertoire, straight down the plate, meat and potatoes sort of repertoire that you really wish you didn't have to conduct?
Yeah. Mendelssohn 5.
There. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Haydn, anything from Haydn from about 45 through about 59.
Okay.
I don't.
Why those? I don't know the numbers very well. So.
Well, I just don't. There was a period of time, for my money in his life, that they just all sounded kind of the same to me.
Right. Okay.
I love 60.
Yep.
Il Distratto.
Yep.
The one where the G is tuned down, the G string on the violin. But the 45, 46. A lot of people do those. I don't like them very much. Tim, I'm also not a fan of early Mozart. Now, music historians, if they're listening, they'll go crazy.
Heretic! Burn him! Burn the witch!
Every note Mozart wrote was golden.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's true, but every note that Mozart wrote wasn't necessarily meant to be performed for a paying public, right. Is my comment to that. Right. So I love the greatness of Mozart. Don't take me wrong. The operas, the latter piano concertos, the latter symphonies, and so on. But please don't ask me to conduct the symphony number 5 or 8 or 10 or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. There are pieces. you're far much younger than I am, but there are pieces that in the early part of my career that I really didn't like at all. And as you get older, and if you have a couple of mentors that help you with all this, I find that I go back and look at them, and then all of a sudden start to love them. And one of those pieces is the Sibelius Seventh Symphony,
Oh,
which is
wow.
now
Yeah, yeah.
in my repertoire. When I first heard Ormandy conduct this piece when I was 10, 12 years old in Philadelphia, Tim, it just went right over my head, and I never.
That's a hard nut to crack, that symphony, for people who don't know the piece. It's so episodic and it's so radical in its structure. Wow, you need to hear that 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 times and then maybe start getting into it. And it takes somebody with a real passion to make that piece work.
That's right. And here again, this goes back to, interesting that you said what you said, because that's exactly what happened to me, that I had to hear it a lot. And I would even dread hearing it, because I'd go to a concert. It's only, as you know, a 20-minute piece. So it's one of those funky pieces that always, you're not quite sure how to program it, where to put it. It's enough of a chunk that do you put it on a 3-piece program or a 4-piece program or a 5-piece program. So it's complicated. And it's certainly not an audience piece, as you know. But oh my God, it has just grown on me, and I've been very fortunate to conducted it now 3 times in my life. I'm going to do it again, I hope, before I die. And so yeah, there are pieces. We change as musicians, as we things happen in our lives. They affect us as artists, and pieces that I loved to conduct 10 years or so ago, I don't have much feeling about them today.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting though. We are products of our environment, Tim.
I'll fess up. So the pieces that I've really tried to avoid, and they're great pieces, they're just not for me. Franck D minor, can't do it. I just can't do it.
Really?
Yeah. So you'll have to teach me that piece, because that's a piece that just can't seem to get into. That and the Schubert 9, the great C major, great work. Just can't get into it. I don't know.
I will join you on the Schubert 9th. And I've even tried liking the Schubert. I mean, I appreciate it, but I've even tried doing it without repeats.
And it's still too damn long.
Which cuts down about 15 minutes, and it's still too long. Now, Tim, Franck D minor. So let me ask you this: have you ever conducted the Song Symphony?
Yes.
And you like that piece?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. What about the Dukas Symphony?
Don't know it.
Okay. So those are sort of similar in style. Mm-hmm. Dukas Symphony is great.
Yeah.
But it's a similar sort of Frenchy, Franck romantic piece.
Yep.
So it'd be interesting because you just don't like the Franck, or you don't like that style of music in the Romantic era.
I think I'm also guilty, because one of the first, I think the 2 first live performances I witnessed were butchered. And your first experience to a work, whether it's a recording or whether it's a live performance, whether you admit it or not, it really leaves a stamp on your perceptions.
Sure it does. Yeah, great performances of a bad piece you could get through.
Yeah.
But if it's a great piece and it's a bad performance, I don't care what it is. Try to sit through a bad performance of the Beethoven Ninth or something. And
they are there.
Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are. The other thing that's interesting is this whole business in programming of perceived time versus real time. And I love to use this analogy. If people, go to church and they hear a sermon that's really energetic and well thought out and well planned, and it lasts 30 minutes, it most often feels like it's 10 minutes.
Right.
But if it's a sermon that sort of wanders and meanders and whatnot, and maybe it's 15 minutes, it seems like 3 days.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing with music, that we as programmers, music directors, have to think, well, what what's John going to think in the audience that comes to 6 or 7 concerts a year? Is this piece going to be a sleeper for him? Is he going to be able to get through it until he gets to hear the Tchaikovsky Symphony or whatever else is on the program? So those are things that I also think about in programming. Yeah.
Well, you've actually got a great segue back full circle into terms of process. I mean, so there are so many things to enjoy and sometimes not to enjoy, but what's your favorite part of the process? Is it programming? Is it preparation? Is it rehearsing? Is it performing?
Yeah, if my wife was here, she would not agree with this because we've had many conversations about this. If I never performed another concert again, I don't think I'd miss it. That's probably the least of all that you mentioned. I think that's probably the least of what I do. I love to prepare, Tim. And I could tell you stories, which I will sometime off air, about it was almost, I had one teacher in particular that was almost, by today's standards, certainly would be abusive in terms of setting a standard for me and continuing to, he was a Reiner protege.
Oh.
So he kept saying, you're not prepared, you're not prepared, you're not prepared. And he showed me that I wasn't prepared. And it was intimidating, it was humiliating, it was embarrassing. I was thrown out of a studio more than several occasions, but I was able to be strong enough and pick myself up enough that I've been able to use that as fuel to make me prepare better. And as you well know, preparation never ends. There's always something. It's like if you're looking at a great Picasso, you could stand in front of it for an hour and then the next day go back and see something you missed. This is exactly what it's like with music. So for me, it all starts with the preparation, and I love the privacy of it. I love, fortunately, being by myself for hours at a time, and continuing to, the questions are the same, whether it's somebody that's conducted for over 40 years or somebody when I just started, what was the intentions of the composer? What did he mean here? What did she want here? Those are the questions that you keep trying to answer over and over again.
That's hard
Sorry. Let me tell you one more thing, and then I'll stop talking. I love the process of rehearsal. I love communicating with our musicians, and that when you've got an orchestra of 80, 85, 90 very highly skilled, smart people, they all, first of all, you start with a premise, they all think they can conduct better than you. So that's just a given. But the fact is that they all are there for the same reason we are, to be inspired, to try to do the best we can. It's up to us to create an environment that's positive yet demanding. And you want people at the end of a rehearsal to feel better about what they did than when they came in. And that's part of the magic of the process. And that's what I try. We've all been into rehearsals, whether it's in college or elsewhere, that you leave rehearsal with your head down feeling, this is just such a drag. I don't want players that play for me to feel like that.
Right. I kind of have this irrational fear, being not have done this for almost a year now. I get nervous for rehearsals. I don't get necessarily nervous for performances, but the real work is in rehearsal, and so you got to be on your game. And now that it's been a year, I'm just I've been doing this all my life. It's like, did I just forget how to conduct? It's irrational, but do you have any sort of irrational fears like this now that the light is at the end of the tunnel? In 6 months, we're probably going to be back to a sort of normal. There's some muscles you haven't flexed for a whole year.
Oh no, I was. I'm like you. I don't think I get too nervous much anymore. But I actually lost sleep the night before our first rehearsal for the first live stream we did in September. I can't remember a time that I hadn't conducted. March, April, May, June, July, August, 7 months. 7 months that I had not stood in front of an orchestra, and I thought, I wonder if I've lost my skill sets.
Right, yeah.
people forget that, yes, rehearsals are for the musicians that are making the noise, but they're for us too.
Yep.
We need it. We need to feel the room. We need to feel who's playing ahead, how they relate to gestures. Is our gesture working? This is a work in progress. So we need the practice as much as anybody. And so that's really something that I think about. But yes, absolutely, I was nervous before that first rehearsal.
I'm going to check our chat room again, and the next question I'm going to ask you, are you the kind of conductor who needs to get amped up before the concert, like a football player, or are you the more kind of zen kind of person who likes to have a little bit of focus? So don't answer that yet. I'm going to see what's going on in the chat room. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, Danny Redmond. By the way, he's on our board, and he's a great jazz pianist, but he hates Mozart. I just thought he's got a Mozart-free zone. So there. Mike Kvach. So he embarrassed me the other day because I couldn't say good evening in Czech, which is what? Just a second, Mike. Don't say it. Just a second. It's Dobry večer, right, Mike? Oh. Right? Okay. So hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly. See, Kathy says, what's the difference between Orchestra Iowa and Des Moines Symphony? Size, audience, and where do you find the musicians? So let's start there. So first of all, I'm going to ask Joe what kind of conductor he is pre-concert, and then have him have the first shot at that question.
I function best. I'm at my best when I'm well rested. Mm-hmm. And that has always been the case for me. Although I love to go out after concerts and have a big steak and a few drinks with our visiting artists and whatnot, that hasn't changed.
Yeah, who needs the performance? That's the best time ever.
Yeah, that hasn't changed at all. Now, Tim, I'll tell you something. When I first started conducting, evening concerts were at 8:30.
Right.
They started at 8:30. So that means that you wouldn't get to a restaurant until 11 or 11:30, and after a meal and entertaining artists and whatnot, it could be 2 or 3 in the morning when you get home. Then you got to do a matinee the next afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Ouch.
Exactly. But
everything's a lot slower in the afternoon, I guess.
But for me, it's just rest. I kind of like to be quiet. My usual ritual, and I don't have many of them, by the way, but my usual ritual is just to come up and lay on the bed quietly for about 30 minutes, maybe 4:30 in the afternoon. If I sleep, then I wake up groggy, and that's no good. So I find, and then the other thing is be sure I have some nourishment, because although I know I'm going to have a big steak or something after the concert, kind of bland stuff that you hate, salads, chicken breast, that kind of thing, just so that I have something in my stomach. That helps me with my concentration. Yeah.
So difference in size and difference. Where do we get our musicians? That's a very multi aspect type of question. So have at it.
Well, we share some musicians.
Sure, we sure do. Yeah.
And as the years have gone on, both these orchestras have grown. Certainly under your baton, I hope somewhat under mine here. So as we have auditions where maybe 20 years ago we had, I would guess that 80-90% of our orchestras were all in the zip codes of our regions. Now we have musicians that have auditioned in this orchestra through competitive national auditions that are coming in from Florida and Phoenix and San Diego and Seattle, and this is all good, and it helps. These are usually young players that are out of school that are thrilled to spend a week in Des Moines to learn some repertoire and to have some fun, see what other musicians are doing and whatnot. So in terms of hall size, your hall seats about 1,600, which is a great size for a 60, 70, 80 piece orchestra. Ours is big for us. Our seat's 2,600. It's too big for the symphony, actually, but that's the reason that we carry a roster of 62 strings versus 46 or 42 or whatever, because we need that much sound to to be produced so people can hear us well. You've been in our hall, so you know the challenges of that hall.
I don't know about you. The thing that keeps me awake at night, and I think it's just a occupational hazard, and that's challenges of personnel. I mean, just fielding an orchestra from concert to concert. I mean, we have all these wonderful musicians coming and going, and wow, just getting them onto stage is really, in many ways, the creative part of what we do.
That's right. Yeah, we spend a lifetime figuring out how to play closer together so we can hear each other, the nuances, the phrasing, the articulation, the intonation, and then we're told we have to sit 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
That's pretty tough. These virtuals that we're doing in the temple on the 4th floor, 25 musicians. I've got 6 first violins and 6 second violins, and the last stand second violin is 45 feet from me. You've got a percussionist that seems like he's playing from the moon or something. And what happens is that, and your orchestra is the same way, you establish at the level orchestras that these are, you establish a certain standard, playing together, ensemble playing, balances. There's a certain shorthand after you've been with an orchestra for a while that they just know this is what he wants,
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I feel like I've had to turn into a marching band director or something. Not that that's bad.
But they have to see you from way over there, yeah.
That's right. And now you're just concentrating on the simplest, most basic, fundamental elements of music. Playing together and keeping a steady tempo.
And hopefully stopping together, too.
Well, exactly. That's important. That's even more important.
Oh, but that's entertainment.
That's exactly right. And speaking of that, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have
Let's finish this up, and I have one last question for you, because I was asked a question about a week ago, and it was a question I should have been able to answer easily, and the longer I started talking about it, the harder it became. A young student came up to me and asked me how you become a conductor. And I remember being in their position, and I was asking the same question to other established conductors, and I was always frustrated with the answers that they gave, because when I was younger, I always thought, well, you have to do this, A plus B plus C plus D equals music director. And it was very frustrating for me that everybody's path was different. And in many ways, well, it's just a strange profession. So maybe using your own biography and your own sort of advice, let's say you were talking to somebody in their late teens, early 20s, saying, hey, I want to do what you do. How do I become a conductor?
Yeah, I wish there was an easy answer to that, Tim. There never has been, and there never will be. When you stop and think about, if you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school, you join a law firm. You want to be a doctor, you go to med school, and you join a hospital and have a practice. It's just not like that for us.
Right.
And what you said is so true. Every single conductor you talk with will tell you a different story. Some for whatever reason become famous overnight. They just, you take a young person, they have talent, the talent's raw, but yet an orchestra will take a chance on them. And the next thing you know, they're standing in front of the Philadelphia Orchestra or something. It happened to Bernstein, when he was a young man, and Ozawa, and it goes on and on. From my point of view, is that I try to separate the career with the music. And what I usually tell a young budding conductor, have a passion. If you're not thinking about what music am I going to hear or study or learn the minute that you get out of bed in the morning and put your shoes on, then you better try to find some other profession, because there are going to be people that do that.
Yeah.
That just simply aren't going to feel whole as human beings unless they study some music. That's where it starts for me. Now, Isaac Stern said, there's never any undiscovered talent. So you just hope, and you have to have faith in the fact that somebody somewhere along the line will say, you know what, you've got something to say. And that's when you hope that that you take the reins, you're ready for it. And, you know, Tim, I was lucky. At 23 years old, right out of Northwestern, I got a job. I was a music director.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a very good orchestra, but it was a wonderful town, Waterloo Cedar Falls, I'm talking about. And I cut my eye teeth on that. We only did 5 concerts a year, but I did my first Beethoven Ninth there, my first Sibelius Second, my first New World Symphony, and I didn't know anything. I mean, everybody was older than I was. Everybody knew, but I also knew that I didn't know much, and that was my PhD. That's
Right.
how I learned. And conductors have to be lifelong learners. They have to have inquisitive minds. What part of frustrating, you know, that I used to teach when the league used to do courses in conducting. I would teach with some really wonderful gurus like Gustav Mahler and Danny Lewis, and the kids would always want to know about career.
Yeah.
How do I build a career? Do I need a manager? Right? And I didn't want to talk about any of that stuff. I wanted to talk about the music. You know, maybe it's naive, Tim, but I feel that if somebody prepares and has a plan, that there will be somebody that comes along that discovers them, that says, you know, you've got some talent. And it usually just takes one person to say that. And then they're on. Look, you were in Kansas City for a while, and
Yep.
that was a great experience for you. You got to meet people, you did lots of concerts, you had some good mentoring, and before that, and then you get to Cedar Rapids, and you're like hitting the ground running. You know what to do.
Yep.
The other thing that I tell young people is never forget that being a music director, if you're lucky, will be 50% music.
If you're lucky. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
just be sure that you know, understand, you've got to like people. You've
Right.
got to not only believe in the music, but you've got to help sell it. You've got to help market it. You've got to help develop it. You've got to help raise money for it. You've got to be the face of the music, and that's also something I think that's magical, and takes. I don't think it's something you can teach, Tim.
I also think it requires us to have an open heart, because people may have discovered us, looked at us, took a chance on us, and we're both at that part in our careers where it's time for us to do that to someone else. You know, to reach out and that helping hand to help that person who may come your way to find their way, because it really is a non-linear kind of career. In many ways, it's a lot like the old European style of apprenticeship, journeyman. You know, you kind of like hang around, you learn from your elders, and maybe, just maybe, you'll catch that baton when it's dropped.
Well, that's right. That's right. Yeah, the stars. It's almost like anything else in life. The stars have to line up
Yeah.
properly, you know. And I admire very much people that can say, I want to be this, I want to be that, and they go after it, you know.
Right.
I mean, I was 15 years old when I knew I wanted to be a conductor.
Right.
And I had everybody in the world tell me, don't do that. You'll never make a living doing it. You know, I mean, there's a million conductors out there. And it just took a couple people. My parents believed in me, and I had a couple professional people that believed in me. And I persevered, went to a good school, and learned, listened to everyone. One of my teachers, I mentioned Henry Mazer earlier. He was one of Reiner's 3 proteges, Bernstein, Walter Handel, and Henry Mazer. And he was old school, Tim. You had to be able to play Don Juan at the piano.
Oh God! Yeah. Wow.
He could do that.
Yeah.
And Henry would say to me, don't try to learn more from my mistakes than you do from what I do well. And that was good advice for me as a young man. And also, he completely insisted that whenever I was working on a new piece of music, that I would talk about the music. He was really, he said, conductors, most of us talk too much. He said, I want you to be able to show what you want musically through your gesture. But he said, sooner or later, you've got to stop and say, I want the music to sound like this. And you've got to be able to talk about it. So that's another important part, I think, of being a successful music director.
Before we sign off, I am going to check our chat room one more time to see what's going on here. Blaine Cunningham, our orchestral librarian, he was just talking about all the trials and tribulations, about the complexities of what we do. And I got to tell you, I think the unsung heroes is always the librarian. I mean, I was always taught from an early age that take good care of your librarian, because they can actually make your day or they can destroy you.
Very true.
Oh, God. And Mike Kvach just said, oh, my check was good enough. Okay. Great. So stick around after we sign off. I want to say thank you offline, privately, but I also wanted to say we had dinner together, 4 years ago or so. It's been way too long, it's time for us to,
agree.
When all this is over, and it's my turn to buy, by the way. So,
well, that's not necessary, but best to you, Tim, to everything that you're doing over there. I marvel at all the great success you've had, and very fond of that part of the state, and a very happy New Year to you.
And to you, Joe. You just are amazing, and you are a great mentor, and. I often, what people don't understand is every once in a while when this happened last week or last year or 2 years ago, if there's a piece that I'm doing for the first time, I sometimes just drop off an email to you, say, you've done this piece before. And it's okay to ask other people for their advice. My goodness. I think sometimes conductors can be a little insular. I want to thank you for being such a great resource and a great friend. So,
always a pleasure.
With that, to our audience, thank you for joining us on our very first Happy Hour with Maestro Tim in 2021. Next week, my guest will be Tomasz Kubinek, performer, comedian, guest artist that we built a program around him in collaboration with Hansher. But Ed, how long ago was that? About 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago?
Yeah, about 10.
Oh my God. Ed, you're getting old. Anyway, so why don't you join us for that next week? Can't wait to see you. And again, to Joe, thank you very much. We'll see you next week.